Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry just to drop into the meeting like this. We're in the midst of a lot of voting and activity in the British Parliament. The situation for the Palestinian people in general has always been bad all of my life. And I was born in 1949 under occupation and many forced into exile and tens of thousands in refugee camps. The occupation of the West Bank by Israeli forces ever since 1967 has got worse. The settlement policy has got worse. Gaza under siege for decades and now under complete occupation and an attempt by Israel to settle it and move more Israelis back into Gaza is absolutely shocking. 45,000 people known to have died, possibly 100,000 more bodies going to be found under the rubble. This is the most disgraceful piece of carnage I can imagine in the world. And I feel this constant sense of anger and frustration as we watch in live television lives being lost in Gaza. The only thing that one can say by way of solace on this is that there are millions of people around the world who are desperate to see peace, desperate to support the Palestinian people, and desperate to turn out on marches and demonstrations, and above all, to provide aid. I've lost count of the number of events I've been to or been organized in my area and others just trying to get aid to the people, the Palestinian people in Gaza. But the Palestinian people should not have to rely on UNRWA, should not have to rely on aid, should not have to rely on charitable donations. They should be able to live in peace so they can grow their food, so they can manufacture their goods, so they can teach their children and they can care for them in hospitals. So it is about empowerment of the Palestinian people. The other thing that has come out of particularly the last year, has been something quite amazing. And that has been a growing sense of understanding of the history of the Palestinian people and also of the culture, the music, the poetry, the art, the song, and the traditions of the Palestinian people. And it's that I think we can hold on to. I produced with a number of other people, including Len McCluskey, the former Unite leader, and others, a book of poetry called Poetry for the Many. And we have read many poems, but the one that always goes strongest to all the events that I've done is Mahmoud Darwish poem on Jerusalem. And I read that out very carefully and very slowly and then encourage the audience to discuss the issue of Palestine and why they've got to show solidarity with it. And so that is what we've all got to do all the time. Keep on keeping on about Palestine and stopping the disgraceful supply of weapons from Britain, from the USA, and from many other countries, which are the crucial parts for the F-35 jets that have killed so many people in Gaza and are now killing people in Lebanon and in Syria. We have to stand with the people of Palestine. That is what I'm doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corbyn. And just I have one question for you. Since we are one of our topics today and key points is the global responsibility and inaction. The role of the international community, we know, of course, that now is insufficient to help the people in Gaza. If I may say insufficient, maybe it's less than insufficient, but being pessimistic or optimistic, I mean, the UK Parliament, is there a kind of feel that they are going to do something or in the future to try to stop this war, or the situation will be like this, no progress, no words against Israel?
Very slowly, attitudes have begun to change, and that started when there was a maneuver in Parliament to prevent there being a vote on a ceasefire. That would be more than a year ago, and a number of us were very, very angry about that. And then there were demonstrations outside MPs' offices. There were marches in all of their towns and cities all over the country. And there was then a distinct change of language in Parliament. And then in the election, which was called last July, which was a surprise to many people that it was held in July. Many were expecting it to be in later in the year, probably November or December, but it was in July. The Labour vote went down. It was even lower than 2019 and much, much lower than 2017. And five of us were elected as independents, quite specifically saying we were standing for a ceasefire and with the Palestinian people. And we formed an independent alliance group in Parliament, and we worked very closely with other MPs, some Labour, some Plaid Cymru, some SNP, and some Green Party, or all of the Green Party MPs, on continually raising issues. And so there is a change, but it's very, very slow. The government reluctantly agreed to suspend a small number of arms licenses supplied to Israel. We've strongly criticized that. It's not enough because as long as we supply the crucial parts for the F-35 jets, then we are part of the problem. And so we are continuing with that. And our next big demonstration is going to be in January when we'll fill the streets of London again. But we've not given up on this. And I'm doing events this weekend in Manchester and other places where I'm promoting a book we've written called The Monstrous Angle of the Guns, which explains the role of the arms industry and arms trade in both supplying Israel, but also encouraging Israel to become a major weapons manufacturer. The people that come to those events are very interested to discuss this and take action on it. And so, yes, things are changing far too slowly, but we are making headway in the sense of public opinion is with us.
Mr. Corbyn, one last question about
Sure.
the ICJ arrest warrants. Just checking if the British Parliament is intending to try to activate these arrest warrants to really bring or call to bring Netanyahu and Gallant to justice, and especially, what's going on now is really confirming the righteousness of these arrest warrants.
As you know as well as I do, there have been a number of legal judgments against Israel on the Fourth Geneva Convention, on the UN Security Council, and the General Assembly, not just in the past year, but over many, many years. Crucial events in the past year have been the International Court of Justice determination of acts of genocide by Israel against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Indeed, I went to the hearing in The Hague as an observer with the South African delegation, and all credit to South Africa for what it did. The ICC hearing, the International Criminal Court hearing, eventually issued arrest warrants. We then demanded in the British Parliament that the British government and the British judicial system adhere to those arrest warrants. Initially, the response of the government was this would be up for consideration at the time. We pointed out that the ICC treaty, the Rome Statute, does not give any leeway to any government on this. They are required to carry out the arrest warrants, whether they agree with them or not. There is no room for maneuver. It is a legal requirement. It's just as much as if it were in domestic law. We then raised it several times by special questions in the House of Commons and eventually got an undertaking from the government that they would abide by the ICC arrest warrants. Now, Netanyahu or anybody else haven't shown up in Britain as yet, and I very much doubt they will. But the headline decision we were given by the government was that they would abide by it. We pressed very hard to make sure that happened, and should any of those people who are subject to ICC arrest warrants arrive in Britain, all of us in Parliament, and indeed tens of thousands of people around the country, would be absolutely on the case, demanding those arrest warrants be carried out.
Of course, I know that your time is pressure, and just in 1 minute, do you think that Smotrich and Ben Gvir can also be included in these warrants or this decrees, or it's something different?
What do you mean? Sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
Ben Gvir and Smotrich as well. We are talking about their kind of incitement to genocide in Gaza could there be included in this?
I think
Uh,
that two things come from that are very important. Yes, I do think the issue not just of the individuals named, but of those that are participating in it in any form, should also, in my view, be subject to the same charges. But also, you're quite correct, the issue of incitement, which then, of course, takes you into the realms of political campaigning and, of course, the role of the media in this. And I think that is very important. The point I made at the last rally we held, 10 days ago in London, was this, that the long arm of international law extends to those that participate in undermining international law. Since the ICJ has given its very strong opinion about acts of genocide by Israel, and the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants against named individuals, including Benjamin Netanyahu, then in my view, and I suspect, and I'm not a lawyer, but I suspect there are many legal opinions that would agree with me, would say that the supply of weapons knowingly supplied to people they know have been found to be in need of arrest warrants over genocide, then becomes complicit in those acts of genocide. And so I find it unbelievable that we are still supplying weapons to Israel, knowing full well that its prime minister is not only arraigned before courts within Israel on charges of corruption, but he is also arraigned before 140 countries around the world on an arrest warrant for the ICC. So, what on earth are we doing supplying weapons to Israel, and in
but the
particular to
but
Netanyahu?
The British Parliament cannot apply this kind of warrants, or not this kind, their own warrants, their own sanctions on these two ministers as a procedure by the Parliament
Uh,
itself.
we can and do demand of ministers that they adhere to the decisions of the International Criminal Court, and they've said they do. What we haven't succeeded in doing is getting them to accept the ICJ decision on acts of genocide, and that is what we're working on at the moment.
Thank you much, Mr. Corbyn, for your precious time and for your contribution. Thank you
It's,
very much for being with us.
it's my pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me onto this program today. It's a pleasure to
Thank
be
you.
here. Thank you.
Thank you.